When I was a kid, I always thought I would take over the family business. I'm following Mom's footsteps. But ever since Gina from TD Business Banking came into the picture, it's like I don't even exist.
Hello?
And sure, her advice is like spot on. I mean, I had no idea you could restructure a commercial mortgage to finance your new product line. This is so good. Why don't you just adopt her, Mom?
Business banking so personalized, it feels like family. TD, ready to help you move forward.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Gavin McDonald, partner with the law firm of Cox & Palmer and chair of the board for the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. Chamber will be making a donation to the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center in the spirit of reconciliation. Thank you to our sponsor for today's event, TD Bank Group. Thanks to TD, this event is entirely free for everyone to attend. This event is also being live streamed on the Halifax Chamber's Facebook page. As many of you know, the Halifax Chamber is a membership-based organization of over 1,750 members who represent over 65,000 employees in all of the 23 provincial ridings in Halifax. We are a nonpartisan organization and are largely funded through membership fees and event revenue. We have worked closely, both in tandem and at opposite ends of the table, with Premier McNeil since he stepped into office. Our job as representatives of the business community is to advocate for a business-friendly environment. We speak to government about issues that impact our members and the business community, including increasing immigration, improving access to key services like high-speed internet, optimizing the size of government, and lowering corporate tax rates. When the pandemic hit Canada in March, the Chamber's president and CEO, Patrick Sullivan, created what became the Nova Scotia Business and Labour Economic Coalition. The coalition became a point of contact for government as they made rapid decisions to advocate for business and their employees at this challenging time, to ensure Nova Scotians were heard and supported, and to assist the development of a recovery plan. 9 months and more than 70 meetings later, the work of the coalition continues. This group is comprised of businesses, not-for-profit organizations, the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, and represents over 15,000 organizations and over 200,000 employees. Representatives of the provincial government are regularly in attendance and provide important updates on new restrictions as well as funding programs. The group provides their feedback directly to government and advocates on behalf of businesses and individuals. Thanks in part to the coalition, we saw some big wins and improvements to programs. We asked the government to provide an assessment tool for businesses to determine whether they were an essential service and whether they could remain open. We soon saw an assessment online tool posted to the provincial coronavirus website to quickly help employers determine if they could remain open in compliance with current workplace safety requirements. We wanted to ensure businesses had quick access to cash where possible to help small business. The provincial government implemented a rapid payment process on invoices it receives from small businesses with which they do business. Invoices are now paid within 5 days instead of the standard 30. We advocated to allow struggling restaurants and takeout businesses to sell liquor with purchases. This was a long-standing red tape issue for the Chamber, and we were glad to see the provincial government quickly move to permit the industry to include alcohol purchases with these types of orders. Finally, we asked them to provide funding for employees who have lost their job prior to and during the preliminary announcement of the CERB. They added the Worker Emergency Bridge Fund, the one-time payment of $1,000 to Nova Scotians who were laid off or out of work because of coronavirus, who didn't qualify for employment insurance and earned between $5,000 and $34,000. While we continue to advocate on a number of issues and want to see more changes, we commend Premier McNeil on his strong leadership throughout the last year. Thanks to Dr. Strang, Premier McNeil and their teams, and the work of Nova Scotians in following their lead, we have one of the lowest COVID rates in North America. This collective action has spared us the tragedy and devastation we see in many parts of the world. Because of our low and consistent case numbers, the Chamber advocates to see restrictions updated to allow local businesses to operate and stay in business. But today is about reflecting on Premier McNeil's contribution to our province during his time in office. He has led us through one of the greatest crises to befall our province, and I'm sure he's not slept well in over a year. We saw collaboration between government, business, not-for-profits, and individuals, but there is still much to do as we move forward through and beyond the pandemic. That collaboration was key to our success in addressing COVID's impact. It will be key in our recovery as a province. We need more of this kind of direct business and community input for government policy and programming. Premier McNeil, we are grateful for your leadership. We want to say congratulations on a job well done. We know it has not been easy to make these decisions, and while we've occasionally don't agree with all of them, we're glad to see Nova Scotia united and largely healthy. The road to recovery isn't a straight line, and we don't expect the provincial or municipal government to know all the answers. But we truly hope to see the development of a plan for economic growth and for a way for businesses to thrive through the remainder of this pandemic and beyond. We commend the province on the work they've done during COVID-19 and the communication and relationship developed through the Nova Scotia Business and Labour Economic Coalition. There is still much to be done to ensure our business community can grow and flourish and benefit our whole community. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our sponsor, Jennifer Auld, Vice President, Atlantic Region, TD Bank.
Excellent. Thanks so much for the introduction, Gavin, and just thanks for the work that the Chamber has done. Greatly appreciated. And good afternoon to all others on the line. At TD, we are committed to helping move business forward. We believe that it's our business to know yours. And I am so proud of our relationship team and how committed they are to business growth within our communities. TD's purpose is to enrich the lives of our customers, communities, colleagues, and even premiers. And working together for a more inclusive tomorrow is the purpose behind our giving strategy, known as the TD Ready Commitment. We know that change is a fact of life, and while it can renew our perspective of the world or how we act within it, change can help some of us get ahead while leaving others behind. And this year has amplified that. The TD Ready Commitment is about change, nurturing progress, and contributing to making the world a better, more inclusive place. Our investments in Atlantic community initiatives, which I'll point out have topped $6 million last year, will help people feel more confident, not just about their finances, but about their futures. We are driven by a central belief that together we can help build inclusion, giving everyone the opportunity to succeed in a changing world. To quote our keynote speaker, we are better together. Thank you to the Halifax Chamber of Commerce for gathering us today, to you, the participants, for joining, and the Premier for sharing his farewell address. I have a hunch during Premier McNeil's address today, many of us will be looking for the next t-shirt branded catchphrase. Now, stay the blazes home and enjoy today's session. Over to you, Patrick.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. That's great. Thank you. That's a good way to start. I'm excited to jump right in, and it's my pleasure to introduce Premier McNeil. Premier McNeil first won the privilege of serving the people of Annapolis Royal in the provincial legislature in 2003 and has been their MLA ever since. Stephen, if I could take the liberty, became leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party in 2007 and led his team to majority election wins in October 2013 and May of 2017. As Premier, he led the province out of a $500 million deficit to 4 consecutive balanced budgets, which allowed governments to make new investments in Nova Scotia's priorities in healthcare, education, and creating opportunities for young people and many more. The COVID-19 pandemic has meant that there will not likely be a balanced budget this year, as the Premier and his government focused on protecting Nova Scotians' health and supporting them through this unprecedented time. During his time as Premier, employment, immigration, and the province's population reached record highs. In fact, I saw a graph the other day. It was an amazing upward trajectory. It's wonderful to see. Nova Scotia became the first jurisdiction in Canada to have presumed consent organ donation legislation, and he issued an apology to minority Nova Scotians for systemic racism in the justice system. Over to you, Premier, for a few words.
Thank you, Patrick. And I will, first of all, I just want to thank Gavin for his kind remarks as well, and as well to Jennifer for her remarks. I very much appreciate it. As I said, when we were starting the opening, I thought I'd finished my last address last year, wouldn't be here this year, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. Now, I want to say, I don't know who put together that video when we started, but I don't know where the guy is gone to that had a lot less weight on him, had dark hair. I don't know if I had very many gray hair when I started this job, but I am grateful for the honor and privilege to have been given the chance to govern this province. I've said this many times. I consider this the crown jewel of the Federation. This is an amazing province, and the people who live in it make it. I just want to begin by talking a little bit about COVID and thanking the members of the Chamber. This has been an unprecedented level of harm that has happened to our province, and all of you have stepped up. Patrick, you and your leadership with Chamber members, I want to thank you on behalf of the government for putting together the coalition that brought together all sectors of our economy, and we all were rowing in the same direction, which was so critical and has been critical for our province to be in the position that we're in right now, where we've been able to continue to see parts of our economy continue to go. And I know some of your members have been hurt more than others. And to those members, I want to say thank you. And I want everyone else to fully appreciate and understand the impact it had. We closed their businesses. We took away their income. We asked them to do more than most of us. And they, to a person, accepted the challenge from public health and from our government to help us try to control this virus. When I think back to the beginning in March, our first case came in, there was so many unknowns, but I believe with all my heart that the decisions we made collectively back in March and April have been holding us in good stead here in January and heading into February of the next year. These has allowed us to control the virus to a certain extent, allowed us to follow the public health protocols so that we could begin to open up our economy and put people back to work. And it's been working. We're seeing many Nova Scotians getting an opportunity to go back to work. While we'll never be able to recover the losses of the past 10 months, we are in a good position and a good foundation to move forward. So my first act today is just to say thank you. This has been an extraordinary period of time, and you all have shown tremendous leadership about putting public health at the forefront, because we have said in this office and many times around, without good public health, there is no economic health. So I want to say thank you. I do want to reminisce a little bit. I go back to 2013 in October and on our journey together when I was given the privilege to be the Premier. I was also given a gift at that particular moment in time, and that was the Ivany Report. And it was really a call to action for all of us. It was a cultural shift that was required. And as the Premier, I think I'm probably the first Premier in the very long time in this province that would have been given a gift that called out every sector of our economy and every Nova Scotian to make a change. A government could not be the only solution to all the fixes that were going to ail us. This had to be a partnership about how we would turn around a province that was $500 million in the hole. We had out migration. We were aging rapidly. Our sons and daughters were seeing no future here, looking for a better opportunity. And quite honestly, many of your members who have global companies, who have business outside of this province, who are making investments elsewhere. While they've kept an operation here and were working here, they were making strategic operational investments in other parts of this province, or quite frankly, go globally. And all of you stepped up to that challenge. I made it very clear early on, I was going to make some tough decisions when it came to how government operated in this province. We were going to shift away from government being a finance institution to one where we were going to strategically invest in partnership with the private sector when it came to economic opportunities or jobs, quite frankly. But it was ultimately going to have to be you who were going to turn around the economic future and the job opportunity for the province in partnership with us. And to a person, you stepped up. We now, through graduate opportunities, have hired over 1,000 young people who've taken their first job in our province because you've given them the opportunity. We supported that in the first 2 years with strategic investments. We provided more of a rebate if you hired minorities in our province who have had a hard time attaching to our economy. But we're seeing a different look where more young people, our own sons and daughters and people from around the world, are saying this is the province to come to work. And that's because of the shift that you made in supporting that. I want to give a shout out to the universities. This has been my pleasure and my privilege to help, I hope, change the vision and your perception in this province. Everyone believed to a core that you have great educational institutions. I have believed you are also an economic driver. You had the potential to help change the demographic of this province, and you did so. You stepped up. We have more people living in this province. More of your graduates are staying here. And quite honestly, the other big important part is that you've actually realized that research should also benefit in terms of job creation. It can't all be academic research. While that's important, you need to make sure you link with the private sector to help drive job opportunities. And it is your institutions, along with the private sector and your students, that have allowed us to have Volta, which is flourishing. We see the Cove on the Dartmouth side of the harbor, where we're seeing an extraordinary opportunity. And at the same time, we're seeing innovation hubs come up in rural Nova Scotia. And that is because you stepped up and took the challenge and you walked side by side with government. Each one of these demonstrates, quite frankly, good public policy matters, but it only matters if we do it together. Government can't fix everything that ails our province. We can certainly be a good partner. I made it very clear. My job was to deliver healthcare, deliver quality education to our kids, look after vulnerable Nova Scotians, but it would be all up to all of us to help drive the economic future and open up this province in a way, that I don't think has ever been before. We are at an all-time record in our population. I'd like to call it our march to 1 million. We're at 980,000. When we came in, we were at around 940, and we actually had a couple of years where our population declined because we needed to make structural changes, and people had to believe we were committed to this journey. And together, we demonstrated to fellow Canadians, to business people, that together we were committed to a cultural shift that was going to provide opportunities for young people who want to live and work here, and that we were going to reinvigorate our economy. Yes, our traditional sectors are an important part of it. They had to change. They had to put innovation. They had to drive innovation. How they were going to change their product, how we would get them into the marketplace. All of that were important pieces. But at the same time, we also needed to make sure that we were creating a workplace that our sons and daughters want to be in. That's where this innovation hubs have created such a powerful opportunity. And the fact that entrepreneurship is a positive thing, that we want our sons and daughters to take risk in our province, that we want them to try to take an idea and give them an environment to take that idea to the next level. And I've been so inspired by the young people who have been in these innovation hubs, who've taken ideas and looked for someone else to support them in their advice. And in many cases, these entrepreneurs have created an economic job here for themselves, but they've also provided opportunity for others. And by growing our population and opening up our population, we sent a clear message I think beyond our own borders, to be honest with you, I've had the chance to represent you in many countries over the last 7 years, looking for markets, looking for opportunity. But we sent a message out of this province that immigration is good. Immigration is not a negative thing. We're watching countries come apart on this idea of division about immigration, that immigrants are coming and taking our jobs. Immigrants are not providing opportunity. We demonstrated that's a bunch of BS, quite frankly, that we've laid out in front of them. They come, they provide opportunity, they work hard, they hire our sons and daughters. You know, when our population was at an all-time high, so was our employment. Our unemployment was at an all-time low in this province. It's the exact opposite to what every other jurisdiction is saying, and even in some cases, even in our own country. We've embraced immigration in a way that has helped drive our economy and change the face of this province. And as we head into this year with COVID, I want to tell you, I think the foundation of what we did in 2013 still hold true today. We've worked together over the last 10 months to keep this province safe. As Gavin had said coming in, public policy positions changed when we got good advice or good ideas from people outside of government or outside of public health. We adjusted those, we worked together. I think we started that in 2013. I think we started in a way that we actually began the journey of the Ivany Commission and that cultural shift. Yes, there's all the goals and all of that, and we're working too hard to achieve them. But I think the most important message in 2013 was a cultural shift, an attitude change, a belief in who we are and where we are, a belief that we could actually compete in the world. In 2013, when our government suggested we should go to China, I'm sure many of you wondered what we were doing. I'm sure many of you wondered what we were doing. What we were doing is finding a way in to the fastest growing economy in the world, finding our way in to sell our seafood products, our agri-food, our blueberries. So making sure that we were getting a maximum price in those values. It also provided us an opportunity to go in to look for new Nova Scotians, university students who wanted to come and learn and work here, create a diverse population, one that I believe will make us the envy of the world. And it is my belief that that is the approach out of COVID, by working together, by recognizing that we need to continue to open up our province to provide an opportunity for others to come and live and work here. We need to continue collectively to tell the rest of the world that we're open for business. We need to be confident about the products that we make in this province, that they're world-class. And we need to demand a world-class price so that that money can come back and be reinvested in your businesses, in our economy, in our communities. And we need to tell people about the quality of life here. The quality of life for the financial sector, for all those who are working, who can work anywhere. They can be in New York, they can be in Toronto, they can be in London. We need to remind them that on the east coast of Canada, there's this beautiful place called Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia, and that you can thrive and work from here, and that you can provide a life where your family at the same time you're earning an income that will provide them with the opportunities. That's the path out of COVID. It's the journey that we have been on. Yes, a new government will adapt and a new government will make changes in public policy as they should. But the principle of what we were trying to do together, it's demonstrated it works. It's demonstrated that we need to continue on this path to help provide opportunity for all of us and our citizens. I want to, before I come back to you, Patrick, to start the questions, my message to all of you is this: stay committed to this province, believe in it, be confident, don't be cocky. I say this to all of my colleagues: be confident about the potential of this province. Make continue to sell this province, not as the best province on the east coast of Canada. Sell it as a place of destination in North America, where no matter where you live and work today, you can come and provide your family with an opportunity to live and chase out their dream. And you can do that right here from Nova Scotia. I look forward now to answering any questions you may have, Patrick.
That's great. That's great, Premier. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate your comments. We have quite a few minutes actually for questions. We have quite a few questions that many people have submitted in advance, and of course we have some questions from the chamber as well. We're going to try and ask a representative sample, I suppose, of the questions that we received. I'll start out with the first question. Premier, you may or may not recall, when I was in government, because I spent a little time working in the Nova Scotia government, we got to travel together back when travel was a thing. And we went to Scotland. We came out of a restaurant, and as we were coming out of a restaurant, a seagull flew over. And the seagull found me, and it deposited a great big seagull mess across my suit and down the front of my suit. And I think you turned to me at that point and you said, Pat, if you're going to work in government, sometimes the occasional seagull is going to find you. So I guess I thought that was pretty good advice for me at the time. I'm gonna say, what advice do you have for many of the leaders that we have on the call today as you kind of look back and look forward?
Listen, recognizing that we're in this together, your success individually is the success of all of us, and we need to continue to, as I said in my remarks, collaboration matters, and be confident that we can go out into the world. One of the things that struck me in 2013 when I came in, we had a number of companies that really, I always say, despite their government, were out, whether it was exporting in the global community, building world-class companies here in the province. But yet we had a large number of companies who had world-class product, but didn't also take that same opportunity to go out and sell that in the global community. It's why we invested early on around export competency. How do we make sure that if you're going into Asia, you understand how to do business in Asia? But we did that with, quite frankly, many of our companies that hadn't been exporting beyond that. So my belief and my true belief is that you can compete in the world from this place, and we need to continue to tell. We need to continue to tell our stories, and many of your members have great stories that we need to continue to share to give confidence to the next group of entrepreneurs that you can live and work and chase your dream right here in Nova Scotia. Absolutely.
So, COVID-19, obviously significant issue, but I guess I'm going to get you to look back, maybe even to 2007, but certainly to 2013, and say, what have been some of your biggest challenges as your time as Premier, and perhaps what's been your biggest success?
Well, I think it would be no surprise to many of you. My biggest challenge would have been to convincing all Nova Scotians they had to be part of this journey. Many of you, I don't know if I've held a session in the legislature where I haven't had a protest. I wasn't asking people to take nothing. I was asking people to take less. We were outstripping the growth of our province to sign collective agreements and with no capacity of government to reinvest in infrastructure, no capacity of our government to reinvest in Nova Scotians. Because the entire revenue growth that we had was being spent in collective agreements. It was the toughest challenge I had. I wish I could have done it. I knew where I wanted to go. Perhaps if I could do it over, I wish I could have got there a little easier. But the end result is where I wanted to be, was that we then had the capacity to reinvest in citizens, in the economy, work with the private sector. The Graduate Opportunities Program is only possible because we slowed down the growth of public sector benefits here. We were able to invest and work with the airport to drive route connections that opened up our province to the world. No longer did you have to fly over Nova Scotia. You could actually land in Nova Scotia on your way to somewhere else in Canada. You could stay here. That made tremendous growth in the tourism sector and, quite frankly, in the business confidence. But we could only do that if we had actually changed that direction. And I would say to you, that is also I think our government's greatest success is that we've asked people not to take nothing, but to take less as we invest it back in the rest of our economy. Because it can't be 30% of us doing really well and the other 70% struggling or no opportunity for no growth. Otherwise, we see the result of that, and that's our children looking for their opportunity elsewhere. And that's not the Nova Scotia I wanted, and it's not the one that I'm leaving. I feel very good about that. That our kids see a future for themselves here in Nova Scotia.
You mentioned the Ivany report and the gift that it was when you arrived in office. Do you feel enough progress has been made, clearly on immigration and perhaps exports, but are there some areas of the Ivany report that we still have a lot of work to do?
Oh, there will always be work to continue on, but we're certainly not meeting the mark on, as I said, on the startups. But I can tell you, we're seeing tremendous growth in startups, and that is a cultural shift, which is to me, all of the goals are one thing, but to me, what that report was asking all of us to do is they do a cultural shift, to look at things completely different, do our role. Government can do what government's supposed to do. The private sector does what it's supposed to do, and the public sector does what it's supposed to do. And if we all stay in our lanes, as we like to say here, then together we can really thrive. So there are some, obviously, that we're hitting, population being one, the opportunities, but I think we're making strides on all of them. Some will need more work than others.
So when COVID came along, sadly, everywhere, but particularly to Nova Scotia, I'm the leader of a membership-based organization with over 1,700 members, and I knew they were suffering. I had trouble sleeping. How do you deal with the job stress that comes along with being ultimately responsible for almost 1 million Nova Scotians?
I wish I had the answer for that. Part of it is this: I had confidence in Nova Scotians. I had confidence that with the right information and the facts laid out about where we were and what we knew and what we didn't know. Because as you remember, even though this virus had hit many parts of the world, there was lots we didn't know. At the beginning, remember, an asymptomatic person couldn't transmit the disease. Well, we now know that's not true. And we know the deadly consequences of that belief because of Northwood. But I believe that in Nova Scotians, that if we stood in front of them, that's why we're one of the few jurisdictions in anywhere that the public health official and the premier or the leader of their government came out together. We didn't always agree, but we came out together with a united front to reassure Nova Scotians, and I was confident in that sense. But I can tell you, when I was finished here early on, there's no question there were days that sleeping was difficult. But the good news was I had people working here, my colleagues, where we could, they didn't mind taking an opportunity they knew humor mattered. So I became the front end of many jokes. And many of them were the changing of the color of my hair and how much I changed, the fact I was missing ties lots of time. The sweaters would show up periodically, but through that together, we knew that we would see the other end of it.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about COVID, and obviously it is very topical over the last 12 months, and it's going to continue to be topical. The 14-day quarantine played a significant role in getting us where we are, and I see other provinces are now adopting that finally 10 months later. But why do you think other provinces took a different approach and kept their borders open to travel?
I'm not sure. I won't speak to them. I'll just give you why we did. We knew acting early on was going to make a difference. If you looked at what happened, at the very beginning, we were terrified, quite frankly, that our healthcare system was going to get overrun. If you go back, we reduced our system by about 30%. Only elective surgeries, anything that didn't have to be done weren't happening in our province. That was because we were watching emergency rooms fill up around the world, and we were terrified of what was going to happen here. So our approach was, let's hit this hard early on, and that meant, parts of our economy were completely shut down, and those businesses and those employees paid a greater price than other Nova Scotians still. But our goal was that if we did this aggressively on the front end, we could then start opening up our economy gradually and start to get us to a point where it wasn't just the construction sector that was working. It wasn't just in parts of rural Nova Scotia. It was also our service sector that was working, maybe not to the extent it had been, not to the capacity it was, but we knew we could open it up if we controlled the virus on the front end. And that's really why we did what we were doing. I'm not sure in other jurisdictions what where they went, and I won't pass judgment on them. I am just grateful that when we started the State of the Blazes home, Nova Scotians bought in. They believed in what we were trying to do with public health, and I believe they knew these decisions were hard on us. There's no joy in, anyone who knows me, there's no joy in me telling someone who's invested their own money, taking a risk. I like risk takers. I like the private sector. I'm inspired by them. I was there. I made a decision. It wasn't because they made a bad decision. I made a decision in their collective best interest. We were closing and had to. But I think for us, that has allowed us to be where we are today.
The federal government provided obviously a significant amount of support. They're the federal government; they kind of get to print the money. Do you feel that Nova Scotia did enough financially? And I'm thinking for the small businesses that are on the line today. Do you think they would score your government well in terms of the support that the province has given? Given that I always want to remind people that it's kind of the federal government first, and then we get to the province. Do you think they would score you well?
Oh, that's a better question for them. My position was more on outcomes. How could we control the virus and get us back to keep good public health, and then allow the entrepreneurs to do what they do? Our approach around the sports was and sometimes we didn't react as quickly as other provinces did, because we wanted to see what the federal government was doing. We knew there'd be programs coming out, and what we were then trying to say, how can we supplement that? Who's been lost? Who's been left out? Where can we? And Gavin, in his opening remarks, talked about the person who didn't qualify for either the CERB or unemployment insurance with the work of your team. So we then added a program that would allow them for that $1,000. So we knew we couldn't keep everybody whole. We knew some people were going to be hurt. How do we, though, weave our policies in at the same time with the federal government programs so that we could capture more people and give them some hope that there would be a future once we got through the first phase of COVID?
Well, and I do want to thank the province for participating in those discussions and being open to those conversations along the way. And frankly, open to those conversations even an hour ago. So we're still having those conversations and still trying to do what's right. And I know that's do what's right for the business community and for Nova Scotians, both from the chamber and I know the province is trying to do the right thing as well. Just to jump on something really positive, and that's immigration. I remember early in your mandate, you actually having a discussion with a Nova Scotian who wasn't very happy about immigration and didn't feel it was the right thing. And I know you probably had many of those conversations. We've seen a slight slowdown in the number of immigrants over the last little while, but it's still, I think, one of the successes that you've had. Can you talk a little bit about that and how important immigration is to our province?
It is absolutely the number one public policy position that has changed us for the last 7 years. And it's my fundamental belief, not only for Nova Scotia, but indeed Atlantic Canada, an aggressive immigration policy is the only way our economic health is going to continue to grow. We need more people. It's that plain and simple. Last year was the first time in my lifetime, and I turned 56 last year, that we got younger. Now think about that for a minute. Since 1964, this is the first year that we got younger. Look, you saw the program, the one that was out talking about aging population on our healthcare budgets.
Yeah.
Well, think about that. If we don't change the demographic of this province with more people driving the economy, creating jobs, opportunities, we're going to continue to be overwhelmed as a government on the cost of healthcare as we continue to falter as an economy and as a province. And we've demonstrated the whole myths. We call them myths. We have a saying around here: give us the facts. Well, the facts are, quite frankly, our population is all-time high and our employment is at an all-time high. Unemployment was at an all-time low. Entrepreneurs were growing. We could see that at the same time we were investing. We didn't get any extra federal healthcare dollars when we were putting in that. We were growing the economy with the support of each of you. And to me, that is the most important thing we can do, is continue to open up our borders to people. Listen, all you need, to be perfectly frank, is a good heart and a good work ethic. I believe this to be true. Under our current immigration policies that were before we were working so hard, I'm not sure Wadea Ferris would have ever got into Nova Scotia. Couldn't speak English, came here to get educated. Well, who else is driven? And when you think about that for a second,
Yeah,
that's what immigration does for you. You know, and they place a huge importance on education. So not only are you bringing an entrepreneur in, you are growing future entrepreneurs, or quite frankly, the next public health officer, whoever. And it is just absolutely fundamental, not only for our province, but I think for the entire Atlantic region, that should be the number one public policy position for all of us, is to grow our population.
that's great. In a slightly different direction, what initiatives are you proud of that have advanced people of African ancestry in Nova Scotia, and how and when did your government change to include people of African ancestry at the policy-making table, or has it?
From the day one. You remember the involvement that I had with the Home for Colored Children? In order for us to move forward, it required us to acknowledge the wrongs. It required us to acknowledge the fact that systemic racism had been rooted in many of our institutions. And the home was, for me, one of those that demonstrated exactly what African Nova Scotians are feeling. We gave less training to the people that were working in them. The per diem associated with feeding those kids was less, and we turned our backs on them. And it demonstrated what 400 years had been like. And to me, that was a path forward for us. This is the decade of people of African descent in the United Nations. We're the only jurisdiction in North America that has a plan to deal with the people of African descent and their integration and their full participation in the economic and social fabric of this province, and a recognition of the role they've already played. The UN came here and acknowledged the role of Nova Scotia on the Count Us In program. And of course, Minister Ince has been at our table, leading the way. We now have a Deputy Minister of African Nova Scotian Defence. We're thrilled the deputy, and we continue to see the improvement through the ranks. And if you look at our agency boards and commissions, in 2013, there were a lot of white men serving on these boards. I'm not questioning whether they were good board members or not, but a whole lot of our population was left out. African Nova Scotians, the Mi'kmaq, women were being left out. We put a diverse lens on who gets appointed to our boards. And I'm really proud when I look at the bench today. The bench reflects who we are. More women appointed to the bench, more African Nova Scotians, first Mi'kmaq woman appointed to the bench. It's a true reflection of the many cultures in our province. And we need to continue on that. And we need to continue to add voice. That systemic racism is in our institutions. Let's not kid ourselves. And I've said it since 2013, and I've tried to improve it every year at every opportunity. But I will say to you, I'm proud of our record, but there's more work to do.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I think diversity, equity, inclusion, all very, very important things to think about. I guess I'm wondering then, you didn't get to pick who the leadership candidates were. How do you feel about the lack of diversity in the leadership candidates for your position?
Well, I'm proud of my record. I'm proud of the effort I did here. I went into far too many boardrooms when I first became premier, when there was maybe one woman. That's not the Nova Scotia I believe in. It's not the one that. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. It's not the one I was raised in. And I'm proud that we as a government have worked very hard to have Nova Scotians see themselves reflected in our institutions. From our daughters feeling like they have the same role in the boardroom as our sons. From African Nova Scotians who recognize they are being honored and being given opportunity the same as my kids are. That matters. And I think any organization that does not have that kind of diversity requires work. I'm grateful for the 3 candidates that are running, all of whom I've worked with, have been in our cabinet. They're good. They will make good premiers, whoever is chosen. But we need to continue to fight this battle. I'm going to tell you, listen, the rock I stood on all my life, who's part of my core, was my mother. And there's no way that I'm going to leave this job or any future job I go to where I'm going to lose sight of the fact that I can't leave out over 50% of the population and think I'm going to make good decisions, or to think that organization is going to make good decisions. I want to make sure that my daughter recognizes if she's got an idea, there's venture capital there that she can invest that will help, and believe in her and her idea just as much as they believe in my son Jeffrey and his idea.
Great. Well, thank you. That's a good point to leave that particular part of the conversation. You would have to be a branding expert, Premier McNeil, to know the impact that Stay the Blazes Home would have had on Nova Scotians, or perhaps the rest of the nation. What were you thinking when you said that, or were you thinking at all at that point?
So listen, I can't take credit for everything. I was in my office and my chief of staff came down and said, "Would you say this?" And I said to her a more colorful expression that I would say, because it was, I'll put it in context. We were at a time where we felt people weren't taking this seriously and weren't understanding the critical importance of staying home and keeping your social bubbles down. We were seeing signs on social media of large gatherings. So it became, and numbers were showing up, and it was in the midst of what was happening in Northwood. So when they came down, they were looking for a strong message that also appealed to some of our heritage. So my colorful expression was not allowed to be used. But I did say, I remember my mother would use the phrase, "Get the blazes outdoors," and many of us, I'm sure, can hear. I don't think it's unique to Cape Breton, but I would say all the Cape Bretoners would have heard that from their own family. That's where my mother's from. So would have heard that, and it resonated because people, it was forceful, but it was also, I think, had people to demonstrate how serious this is, and quite honestly, these simple acts of staying home, washing your hand, being careful, being respectful of your neighbors, supporting one another, could actually save lives, and actually could turn us around and get us out of the early phase we had with COVID into starting to open up our economy and move forward.
Can you look back, and you're talking a little bit about COVID, but can you look back over your time and say what was perhaps the most stressful day as Premier, or is there one day as Premier that was the most stressful?
Listen, the last 10 months, we were dealing with COVID. The April really massacre is no other way to say it, was such a devastating day. And there was so much death and so much sadness. And really, in many ways, no way to rationalize it. Like, there was no way to comprehend really what was happening and what had happened. We were in the height of Northwood, and then, of course, what happened. And then, we ended up losing other fellow Nova Scotians in the helicopter crash, and then the snowbird crash. And in my own riding more recently, we lost Chief William Salas fishing vessel, where we lost other Nova Scotians. But the April of time was really the one that was most devastating in lots of ways. And I'll be perfectly frank, I didn't realize the impact it was having on me until, you know, I had some time to reflect and be away. I hadn't been home for quite a period of time at the beginning of this, and I actually ended up at home the night that we were having, for the first time that we were having the concert. And it really became, you know, it was one of those nights where all of what was in there had to come out, and it did. And then we came back and went right back to work and did what we had to do.
It was obviously it's been a difficult year for every Nova Scotian, but you know, I think my thoughts are certainly with you and folks in leadership who had to deal with what was a horrible occurrence, and then frankly many difficult things that went along over the year. Just, you know, where are you going next? What are you going to do next?
I'm going to rest a bit. I'm going to set a personal goal of losing 2 pounds a month between now and the end of the year. That'll get 20 pounds off of me. But I'm looking to go back in the private sector. I'm looking to do work in the private sector. There's some things that I will do because of interest for me that are outside of work related stuff, but I am going back to work. And I'm loving this job, and I really have enjoyed this job. And it's not that I'm not leaving because I don't like it, or I'm leaving because I just fundamentally believe 2 terms of a majority government is time. And it's time to go and let someone else kind of take our province and see what they can do. If you look, when governments find themselves in trouble, it's usually terms 3 and 4. I certainly felt there was a path for another government, another majority, but it was time. It's the right thing for Nova Scotia. It's the right thing for me. But I am not going home to retire. I'm going home to rest for a bit, get a little healthier, and then. But I'm going to be going to work, doing something hopefully within the private sector.
Well, we do eventually or will have lots of networking events for the chamber. So I'll look forward to seeing you at some of those events as we go along. Now, you don't get to tell the next premier what to do, but what projects or what initiatives would you like to see them continue in the coming months and years?
I think the healthcare infrastructure redevelopments are critical. I think broadband is one that we need to continue to make sure we put out across the province. I don't think it's unique to. I think those are things I would tell every public official that they should do that. And I know these 3 guys that are running now all believe, and we're big parts of how do we redevelop healthcare to modernize it. At the same time, making sure that we have the high-speed infrastructure around all parts of our economy.
And are you going to miss this job?
Yes, I'm going to miss the people. I'm not going to miss the office. You know what? I never take myself too seriously. I take the job seriously. You know what? I'm thrilled. I've been honored to do this job, and it's been a real privilege. But I'm gonna miss the people. You know, and it's not like I'm going somewhere but you just won't. You know, it's like every workplace. That you work together with people for long periods of time over intense issues. It's hard when you all decide you're going in opposite directions, and you end up doing that. And so that'll be what I miss is the people. But someone else can do the job. We're all replaceable.
And what advice would you give one of these 3 fellows that are going to be the next premier in just a couple of short weeks? My it always been is stay true to your core. Stay true to the values that were instilled in you. Believe no matter how much noise or what's happening, always go back to why you make your decision. And your decision should always be made on the principle of what's right for Nova Scotia, and then figure out the politics of it. It's the advice I got from an entrepreneur in Nova Scotia. When I first got elected, it's one I tried to live to, and I tried to stay to the cores and values of my parents. And when I made these decisions, even when they weren't popular, this is not a popularity contest. If you're looking to be liked, this is probably not the job to take.
if you do it. I hope people respect the decisions I made in some form or another. And then my other piece of advice is I tell them to stop reading the media.
Well, yeah, I can understand. I can understand why you would say that, but of course, an informed, a good media is important to a strong democracy. But I take your point.
Listen, I agree with you. A good media is important.
Facts matter.
Sorry, I'm not going to name names because they're all on the phone right now.
Yeah, well, since they're on the phone, let me say this: facts matter.
Well, you know what? They're all jealous that that this is the one time they don't get the one question and the one follow-up.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. They'll get lots of opportunity next week.
Okay. So Dr. Strang seems like a very nice guy. Is he really difficult to work with?
So, the funny story, I don't really know. I think I might have met him once, but the really first time I met him was when he came into the boardroom for the first COVID update for me. And that would have been a couple of days before we made the announcement, I think, on our first case. And of course, he was, because of his job, he would always be critical of governments around their public health policies. And so I was like every other government. I'd be on the receiving end of some of those. But he is a wonderful man. I have really grown to respect, appreciate him, his gentleness, his kindness towards people, his openness to listen. We didn't always agree in public on the decisions we were making. We would have that out in this boardroom, but I always trusted him, and he, I think, trusted me. But he is a genuinely kind human being. He's got a great heart, not just on public policy. He cares about people in a way that is so lovingly, to be honest with you, is a way to say it. Even people he would meet for the first time. Here's a man who, is under tremendous amount of pressure of dealing with public health. He knows the impact he's having on the economy, but he's focused on the issue of public health. And then he'll go and stop and visit a Nova Scotian who he's inspired on his way home. That's the kind of human being he is. And one of the positives of COVID for me is that I consider him a friend. And that's one of the positives for me.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Premier. Are there any final comments you want to make? Anybody you want to thank?
Listen, I want to thank all Nova Scotians for believing in the province. I will tell you, I think our path out of this will be better than most provinces. We've been giving fiscal updates. We are in much better fiscal health than people will believe and think. We will have a deficit, but we will be in a position that much of that deficit is related to COVID. They're not structural issues, and it will be less than what people think. We've been building a budget now for the last really 10 months. We will hand a budget over with to the new leader, which will put this position in one of the best positions of any Canadian province to come out of COVID and allow us to build on what we've been doing collectively together. And then the new leader will add their own piece to it. But I'm optimistic, and I really, really fundamentally believe when I look around the world, not just in our own country, but when I look around the world, we're in a great position to continue on a path of welcoming new citizens, growing economic opportunities, changing the culture, continue to change that about how do we improve and diversify the economy. And what's driving much of that is the optimism of our young people who see a place for themselves here. And we need to continue to do that collectively and together.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. So I'll have to cut us off there. I could keep going, but thank you very much, Premier McNeil, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time today. And frankly, thank you very much for your service to Nova Scotia. Really appreciate it. I've enjoyed dealing with you. Of course, we've had our disagreements, but I've enjoyed dealing with you over the years. Really appreciate your time and your commitment to this province and to the people here. So thank you very, very much. Probably something you don't get to hear that often. You only hear it when you leave.
Listen, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for jumping in front of that seagull and me in Scotland.
Yeah, there you go. Took the seagull for you. I guess that's the good way. We hope you enjoy. It doesn't sound like a retirement, but we hope you you enjoy your time as you move forward in your career. Look forward to you becoming a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank our sponsor TD for supporting this event and making it free for all. And thank you very much to everyone. And this, I should tell you, is the largest crowd we've ever had on a webinar. So thank you very much for attracting that crowd. I want to thank you very much. And we look forward to working with the new Premier to continue to bring prosperity and growth to Nova Scotia. Have a great week, everyone. And thank you very much, Premier. Look forward to seeing you on TV soon.
Take care now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.